Hey there, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm here today again with Rebecca Chaplin. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey, everybody.
We started this series, Growing Whole, the two of us. And so I love coming back around to it. It's not over yet. We're still going to do some more conversations. Hopefully, you'll come back again as well. But today, we're going to talk about sex and aging. And for those of you who don't know Rebecca, I'll just give you a little description. She's passionate about the expression of wisdom as we age. She values the opportunity to channel the passion and gifts of older adults in Western North Carolina. Since 2016, Rebecca served as Associate State Director of AARP in the North Carolina Mountain Region. Rebecca's worked in the fields of gerontological research, policy, and practice in the US, Canada, and England. She graduated with a master's degree in gerontology and has also gained experience and expertise as a Reiki master and as a somatic sexologist. She lives in Western North Carolina since 2006 and currently resides with her husband, toddler, cats, and dog near the Pisgah Forest in Barnardsville, North Carolina. Thanks so much for being here, Rebecca.
Well, this is it's a really fun topic. And as I was just telling Raven before everyone got here, just thinking again, reflecting on sex and aging and sexual well being has just brought up that really great sexual energy for me. So I'm happy to be here and to be integrating this information. You mentioned the somatic sexology, Raven, and
Mhm,
that period of my work was really 2010 to 2017.
mhm,
So it's been a minute since I have looked at this really important topic. And as I dived in, I was like, it's time. It's time to have this conversation. And I kind of want to declare this a safe space for
mm,
people who are with us, that this is not like an encouragement to go out and be more sexual or be anyone other than who each of us are. This is an invitation to deepen through the possibility of sexual expression.
beautifully said.
Mhm.
So let's just start with a basic question, I guess. Sex and aging, sex as we get older, why is it important as
Yeah,
we age?
it's a basic question and it's such an important one. Well, sex is important for us as we age for all the same reasons. Sex is important for any age. It provides an opportunity for human connection if we're engaged in sexual activity with another. So, just connection, touch, relationships. I mean, social isolation is a big issue for all of us as we age. And the more we can foster human connections and the experience of touch, it's invaluable. Not to say that sexual expression and activity has to be done with another person. We can still benefit in many ways by moving and feeling our sexual energy by ourselves. And the benefits to that, whether we're alone or with someone else, the release of endorphins, the reduction of stress. Like I ask people, are you feeling some stress in your life right now? Well, maybe it's a good idea to tune into that type of an energy that can help us release some of that stress and anxiety. It's not always our first go to when we feel stressed to think, maybe I need to have sex. Um, and let's see, some of the other benefits to it can improve our physical and our mental health. Yeah, and I guess reduce a sense of isolation in the world. I know for me, it can also make me feel more energetic.
Mm,
And one of the things I want to talk about today is just moving our sexual energy. If it's just that, if we just practice moving our sexual energy alone or with others, I I could bet on one feeling more energetic, more confident, more empowered in the world. So I think that there really are a lot of benefits. I hope that's a
mhm.
good summary.
That's a great summary. What are some of the concerns of I guess of a seasoned adult, a more seasoned adult? What are some of the concerns about sexuality and sexual energy and those changes?
Yeah, I think that it can be summarized in some way by saying it's not what it used to be,
Mm,
or it is what it used to be and I'm stuck and I can't change it. So I think it has to do with kind of connecting our current sexual experience with the past. And I say this based on my experience of seeing clients as a somatic sexologist. Like I saw individuals, and what I noticed, what the some of the challenges people had as they moved through life were like a decreased interest in sex, for one, just kind of
Mhm.
feeling more asexual and wondering if that's okay. Painful sex is a big one for female
Mhm.
bodied people that I hear. Premature ejaculation and delayed ejaculation, meaning, penis gets erect and doesn't ejaculate, so it can be
Mhm.
painful. That's a problem that I've seen. And then inability or difficulty maintaining an erection for a man. So they're pretty physical in general, most of the
Mhm.
concerns that people came to me with when I was practicing. Um, yeah, I would say that those are the top ones, but then I think if we go a layer deeper and just think about like the ageist societal perspective and our own internalized ageism, there's a lot about body image and changing
Mhm.
bodies and feeling kind of comfortable and confident within our bodies, that leads to kind of a cutting off of sexual experiences. So
Mhm.
I think that is the top concerns that I was aware of. And if people are watching, I do want to invite them to make comments or ask questions. It's a good
Mhm.
now's the time. It's a good opportunity if you feel so inclined.
Absolutely, yeah. So I wanna backtrack a minute and ask you something, but before I do that, one of the interesting things, a little paradox that you just mentioned, is that as we age, we have there is this paradox because in some ways we know our bodies so much better than we ever have. I mean, we know what we want, what feels good. We know how to respond or how our bodies respond to different things. And then there's this apprehension about, well, there are a few more bulges and a few more dimples and a few more wrinkles and things like that. So, how do you find that, or how did you find that with your clients? Was there still, in some ways, a sense of more confidence?
Hmm. That is a really interesting question, and I feel like there is, in general, kind of a more reticence, not an increased confidence in that realm, in
Mhm.
sexual realm, especially if someone didn't have a long-term partner. I think it makes a difference whether you have a long-term partnership or if you're practicing moving sexual energy and arousal on your own versus out there, maybe meeting new people or having new sexual counterparts. And I feel like the antidote to that is to practice doing it, to like get
Mhm.
back in tune with it, because sometimes, because those changes happen and new folds and dimples and parts of our body have changed, that maybe we just don't even look at it. And
Mhm.
so my antidote would be to look at it, like even to use a mirror, to really get to know parts of your body, just get to know them again, establish a relationship with our own bodies, even
Mhm.
before we reestablish it with someone else with our own bodies, can be one way to kind of increase our sense of confidence, around that we do know our bodies better, but maybe we haven't looked at them in a while. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
It makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. Yeah, and I was thinking about, it wasn't that long ago even, I don't know, a year ago or something, I was looking, trying to see something on my back, and so I was holding a mirror and looking in a bigger mirror, and I was like, "Whose backside is that?" I was I was so disconnected from the way it currently looks. So, it was interesting and not horrible. It was just interesting, that I had to familiarize myself with that again. But to backtrack, I want to ask about, because you've mentioned you were a somatic sexologist. What is that exactly, and what's the difference between just a sexologist and a somatic sexologist?
That is a great question. So a sexologist is as it sounds. It's the study of sexuality, the study of human sexuality, and practitioners or sexologists can help work through any sexological issue or concern by talking. They're not therapists, so they're not necessarily trained to go deep into kind of emotional roots of challenges and problems, but they can help pinpoint issues and help identify solutions. They are a great great resource for people who are, interested in talking out some of their concerns and issues. And you could Google sexologist near me, and you'll find one. They're by
Mm,
us in Asheville. They're all around the globe. A somatic sexologist also can be termed sexological body worker.
mhm,
That is somebody who is trained to work with the physical body. So while there does involve some talking, the idea with somatic sexology is the wisdom of the body. The body holds memories, emotions, consciousness around our sexuality. And when we can actually go through the portal of the body, we can have real access to insights about our sexual patterns. So, just to give you like an example of that, somatic sexology does involve hands-on body work.
mhm,
Usually includes like centering and mindfulness awareness, the slowing down of our breathing, the opening up of our senses, so that let's say somebody had a painful sex. A somatic sexologist would use like gentle presence and touch to move closer and closer to the after establishing trust to an area where some sort of tension started. And
mm,
then, like, let's say that was an upper thigh.
mhm,
So we would leave our hand right there and notice when the tension started and actually go in a little bit and invite the person to relax into any memories or reflections, to see if that can help bring insight into why they might be tensing up in that area.
mm.
In addition, they teach practices, so like breathing practices, relaxation practices, and they can help guide somebody through those kind of physical experiences. So that's the primary difference between those two fields of study, and neither are psychotherapists. So although emotions will come up, neither field is really trained to address those emotions specifically.
Okay. So how did you get, we usually teach what we need to learn,
Right.
those kinds of things, or heal what our own wounds are. So how did you come about that career choice?
Yeah, so it totally wounded healer there,
Mm,
and on reflection, I see how useful, because when you become a somatic sexologist, you're actually getting a lot of sexological body work done to you. So I was able to release and uncover a lot about myself, but I was living into a real prostitute archetype in my life. Like, I was
mhm,
finding power through sex in different ways by getting gifts or like wanting something from the experience of my expression of my sexuality. And I know I'm looking up. When I think, I look up. So just acknowledging that.
good.
So as I started to go deeper into like, why am I doing this? I thought to myself, like, is that my path? Is it my path to do some sacred sex work in the world? And I thought I need to just explore this and unwrap it and get some training. And it came down to some early experiences I had in my development and finding meaning and purpose in my life. And so somatic sexology and sexological body work gave me an avenue to help other people, to help them explore their own concerns and issues, and to have it be part of a career path. So I feel like it was a grounded way for me to move forward with a shadowy part of myself and
Mhm.
integrate it. And yeah, I feel like it was a real treasure to find. And I know I gave you the link there for how someone can learn more. I studied through the Advanced Institute for Human Sexuality, and there's a website for that. And I thought it was like a really special training and resource. There it is. Yeah, and for people who might be interested in just exploring this field. And there were many people who were there through the certificate program who themselves just wanted to do healing work on themselves, and all ages. And I would say it was about half and half, people under and people over 50 going through that curriculum, and many for personal discovery. So
Wow,
I think it's a useful resource for people to be aware of. Thanks.
definitely. You mentioned the prostitute archetype and, uh, money, sex, and power, I think, is what came up for me. So, we've both, done some high priestess training that was around those connections, because they are all so very connected. What do you wanna say about that? Or, also, money, sex, and power, does that relationship change as we age?
Mm. I think that relationship does change as we age. I would postulate that as being true based on my experience, but I don't have any good research to back me up. So there's a inherent power dynamic when we talk about sexuality, and power could be considered a dirty word or a negative word as
Mm.
it relates to sex. However, maybe you could just put up that yin yang symbol,
Sure.
Raven. If we think about sex as kind of an interplay of opposites coming together, whether you are in a heteronormative relationship or if you are in, a same-sex relationship or, any kind of non-binary relationship, there's always these energies at play. There's the rising up and then there's the descending and more receptive energies, and they're just constantly moving and working, and both create a wheel of energy of power. Both sides have power. If you have the kind of ascending energy, the yang energy, without the yin energy, it's not grounded. The yin energy grounds and moves the energy forward, and the yang energy can be talked about as more aggressive or assertive, or like the sun rising sort of energy, and that has power. So if we think about sexual relationships and the way we relate sexually as kind of this yin and yang working together, there's just an inherent power dynamic. And you see that often played out in sexual relationships. So we can take away the yin yang if thanks. And if we think about that constantly changing dynamic, and sex and power have kind of been put into a shadow realm, like it's not something that people really want to talk about, but it's actually a good place to mindfully play out our relationship between sex and power, because many people have them. I mean, they might not be live on YouTube talking about them, but most of us have some dynamic with sex and power and the way that that works in our lives. So if we can bring it into consciousness and use it in our relationships through, like, role play, for
Mhm.
example, is a great way to talk about those things. Or one technique I like to use is if you're used to being in a specific power dynamic role in your sexual activity, to do the opposite. Try doing the opposite, because the reality is that we contain both. We contain both the yin and the yang, and it's by practicing and strengthening the other side and bringing consciousness to it that we won't just see changes in our sexuality, but we'll see changes in our life.
Mm, mm,
And then the other piece about power is just empowerment, which I think is very exciting. And that by consciously moving our sexual energy, and I'm not talking about having an orgasm, I would just say forget the orgasm altogether. If it happens, great, but that catches a lot of people up. But when we move sexual energy, either alone or with others, we are going to project a very powerful energy. So if you walk into the room after you've just moved some sexual energy, like, it shifts the way that we move through the world. So there is an
mhm.
opportunity to empower ourselves through our sexual energy.
Wow. Okay. So that kind of leads to a question of possibilities. What are the sexual possibilities, I guess, as we age?
Well,
Yeah.
one thing that you noted was that our experience, we have more experience to draw from. And I think you said that earlier when we were talking about kind of an increase in confidence and knowing our body better. Like, so we can draw from more experiences from our life. And that's a good thing. And that comes with age. We have that larger repertoire, and oftentimes a reduced self-consciousness in some ways, where we might have increase in other ways. We might just feel like, we might not need a partner anymore for this reason or that reason. So we might not be seeking sexuality for the same reasons. And that increases our possibility to maybe get playful. And another possibility that comes is, like, as we enter new chapters in our life, and some people might call that like retirement, or some people might call it the third age, or, there's
Mhm.
many ways we think about it. But the opportunity there and the possibility is there is, like, what do you want your relationships to be like? In the maybe in earlier years, relationships were around all sorts of things. They might have been around having children that you took care of. They might have been around forming a bond and a community. But now, what does the relationship mean to us? And if it is sex inside of a relationship, and how do we want to play that out? So it's kind of like a fresh slate in a sense, or there's that
Mm,
possibility of there being a fresh slate. Um, and if we do bring consciousness to some of our core erotic themes, which I think we'll talk about in a minute, or power dynamics, which we just did discuss, there's the possibility of increasing our repertoire. Because we have this consciousness as we age, we can say, "Oh wow, I've done it that way for 40 years. What would it be like if I did it total just tried something else on?" And I
mm,
think that that leads to personal development in aging, which I'm really passionate about. Like, how do we develop in at later stages in our life? And I think it's, spiritually for in large part.
mhm.
So that becomes a possibility as we explore our sexuality, looking at it from different lenses.
Mm. Yeah, I was thinking about Hermetic wisdom, of course, that I teach and that you have, you've studied with me. We have lots of talks about this. And one of the I guess the aspects of Hermetic wisdom is that sexual energy is life force, and it's almost like, and it's been a while since, because this is not my specialty area, but that sexual energy is almost like an elixir or a tincture, I guess. So if we went to the store and bought a tincture, it would be a lot of things that went into that tincture to make it very concentrated. And so sexual energy is from a lot of different components, physical and spiritual and everything else. And basically that there are three reasons for this energy: procreation, pleasure, and spiritual development. And that seems to be, I mean, from the people that I've talked to that are a little bit older, it seems to be their focus is sexual expression as a spiritual path. So what are your thoughts about that?
Ooh, I love that. Thank you for bringing that forward. That feels so good to think about. So I think, for the spiritual development piece, like there's an opportunity to connect our energy centers, our energy bodies through our sexual energy. And I think that inherently helps us to awaken in new ways, and just, really, really, elementary or quick practice in that I think can be life changing is
Mhm,
just like with an inhale, we tighten the perineal muscle. That's that muscle in between our anus and our genitals. We tighten that muscle. We imagine, and so it is, energy moving up our body. And the quickest, easiest is then to just exhale and imagine your heart opening.
mm,
And I find like I just do that regularly, and it helps me keep my heart very open, like when I'm feeling shut down. So I think that's one example of the sort of spiritual kind of personal development that's available through the elixir of our sexuality.
mm,
And but then also, as we bring consciousness to some of these old patterns, we can really heal some trauma, some deep rooted aspects around our sexuality. So I think that that's another opportunity for that spiritual personal development as we age.
Thanks for sharing that. If you have any other little tip or tool, exercise come to mind during our interview, please just feel free to speak that out. I do want to talk about erotic themes. You just mentioned that. Tell us what those are and how can you find yours?
They are like formative experiences that are informed by our social, cultural, or I'll use the word intrapsychic to mean kind of like all the things that go into our psyche, the input that goes into our psyche. They're formulated through those three areas, and they kind of set the stage for a default as it relates to our sexual expression. So you may notice that you might tend towards one or more of these three erotic themes. The first being sensate focus, that your sensations, you really like touch. You might close your eyes during sexual activity. It's not about who you're with, who one is with. It's about the experience of sensation moving through the body. And I would say that includes energetic sensation, energy moving. The
Okay.
second would be role play. So there might be a really strong desire to heal an experience by replaying it through our sexuality and sexual energy. So that would be the second, and the third would be emotional intimacy or relational. Like if you find your default is to like get deep in with someone, you keep your eyes open, you really connect with that person, you feel a oneness and a merging when you're together, that would be
Mhm.
a third common erotic theme. And of course, there are probably others, but those are kind of three cups or categories that we can think about it. And because we have these as part of our default, we tend to just do that. And sometimes it
Mhm.
takes somebody else to come into our life to help to encourage us to do things differently. But sometimes just being aware and saying, tonight or tomorrow or next week, I'm going to just set a goal of doing this differently, of just
Mhm.
doing something to feel the sensations, or I'm really going to connect with a partner, or I'm going to play with a fantasy that might interest me. So those things, just doing it will affect one's life and lead to some personal awareness and growth.
Wow. Wow. Well, if somebody, I'm trying to think how to ask this. I think, okay, so I talk to clients and things like that, and people in my courses, and sex is a big thing for people over 50 to talk about with each other, especially, other women bringing it up to, or men bringing it up to other men. It's an interesting thing. And so I've heard so many people say, and these are, I mean, very, very aware, mindful, conscious people say, I would be okay if I never had sex again. I don't, it's just not something that's important to me anymore. And I'm wondering, through the lens of everything reflects everything else and how we do anything is how we do everything, how do you find this statement? What do you think is behind that, or if anything?
I'm careful, because I want to hold space. And I
Mhm.
have felt that ways through chapters of my life where
Sure.
that wasn't where I wanted to attend to and
Mhm.
focus on. And I think that's great.
Mhm.
That's an empowered choice. But I think it's important to recognize that it is a choice. And when we get out of practice of doing anything, it has a momentum and an inertia. So if we
Mhm.
stop engaging sexually, it's more likely that we'll stop engaging sexually. And then it becomes a practice to say, do I want, and I like to think about it as energy. Like, do I
Mhm.
want to have that energy in my life? Whether or not it's about partnership, I think that's important to put off the table. Whether or not it's about orgasm, let's put that off the table. But do I want to have sexual energy in my life? And if I do, and that creative life force energy, if I do, then how do I want to look at that? And maybe the answer is no. Maybe someone says that I don't want that in my life right now. I'm accessing this through other channels. And
Mhm.
I think that that is a wonderful and empowered choice.
Sure. And what are so and I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting myself
Okay.
on the spot because we didn't know, some of these questions would come up, but I wonder, what are some of the channels? How does sexual energy, what twists and turns can it take as
Mm,
we get a little bit older?
mm. I think a big part of it is letting go of the orgasm, which I've mentioned a
Mhm.
couple times. And I
Mhm.
think kind of the goal oriented sexual expression is one that many people focus on, especially in earlier years. Like we have something to prove. So if we take away having to have to prove something or be something to other people, then what is possible? So I think that is one of those like initial roadblocks. And then like changing body function. And I'll just give an example of, let's say, someone in a male body has difficulty maintaining an erection.
Mhm.
And so that could become a block, and someone says, I'm just not going to do this anymore. Or painful sex is another one, I'm just not going to do this anymore. So soft penis massage can create arousal, pleasure, movement of sexual energy. Like it doesn't need to be the same as it used to be. And similarly, like for painful sex or tension around sexual energy, like erotic body mapping, figuring out where it is. Where's the body holding some memory,
Mm.
some psychic or, some consciousness that is blocked right now? And do I want to know about that? So am I answering your question
You
that you
are.
asked? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the blocks tend to be maybe physical or relational. Another two more: death or loss of a spouse.
Mm.
That could have been a relationship that held that sexual context for so long that it's hard to imagine it being outside of that relationship.
Mhm.
And it's maybe sacred in that way. And the third is if people are recovering from any type of addiction, alcohol addiction, or drug addiction or anything like that, and maybe they had most of their sexual experiences while under some sort of an influence. That can be a blockage. It can say like, how do I do this
Mhm.
without that substance that I use? So those are some of the things that can be difficult to overcome as we age and change other habits or have losses and changes to our body.
Okay. So if somebody is wanting some support, maybe they feel stuck or they just don't really know, who would they reach out to? I think you mentioned it, right?
Yeah, I think that if somebody were wanting to support that, if they were interested in like kind of somatic sexology, that field, there is a location you can go to find someone nearest to you. And
Mhm.
Raven just put up that URL. You can also just Google sexologist, and you could find somebody like that in your area. Talking to a therapist can be, a good place to go. But even just talking at all, just talking to friends, opening it up. They say that you asked for other practices, and I'll name two before we go.
Yeah.
One is like our throat chakra for people who jive with energetic centers. Our throat chakra and our second chakra, our chakra, are related. Even muscularly, they are kind of round muscles. So when we
Mhm.
talk about things, it actually does help open up our lower areas, our pelvic area, our sexual organs. And so the two sexual practices that I'll end with are, one is that, like, opening up your throat can help release tension in the genital area. And it could just be as simple as toning or just make some noise, talk about it. And the second is something called anal breathing. And for this is a fun way to end, huh? You know how they say, and we all can get a little bit intense about things sometimes, but there's nothing that a little anal breathing can't help to relax your mind and your body. And as
Well,
I saw Ruth Ann say in the comments that age has nothing to do with being sexual. So energy is great, like creativity. Yeah. And so like all of these practices are not age inclusive or exclusive, but anal breathing is like when you inhale, you kind of like push down through your anus. And then when you exhale, you help it to relax. So you like inhale and you're like pushing down, exhale, relax. I mean, I know this is a lot to talk about on YouTube, but what I will say is when we have a tight ass, other things in our life will be tight as well. So it's just a practice and a way that we can use our sexual energy to help transform our lives.
wow. Well, that's just a lovely way to end.
That was more than you more than you bargained for.
Is there, if anyone wanted to, I know that you work in the field of aging and you're doing amazing things, and we kind of diverted to this topic, this is not something that you're actively doing. Your sacred work is not in somatic sexology anymore. Um,
Correct. Yeah.
if
So
somebody,
this Go
Mhm.
ahead.
If somebody just had a question about aging or resources, can they reach out to you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we can put my email in there, and it may be helpful if I just type that in real quick and you can
Okay,
copy
sure.
and paste it. I'm happy to field any emails. I think I got it there. And I'm open to book deals.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding at all. But my work with AARP is really grassroots community organizing. It's awesome work. And the things that I'm expressing right now, these views, they are my own, based on my experience, research, and work and practice. So I think it's a field that deserves to open up more, and it's a field that deserves some voice. So yeah,
Mhm.
I am reachable through that email address, but just really happy to be included in the conversation around growing whole. So thank you so much,
Mhm.
Raven, for having me.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thanks for doing this important work. We so appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll have some more conversations coming up. Who knows what we can talk about? Okay. Well, thanks so much to you for listening, for joining in whenever you do, and go ahead and click subscribe below because there are more discussions coming. And I'm Raven Sinclair. I'll see you next time.